It's Saturday when we cover more in-depth versions of our real-life stories of the impossible. My name is Alain Nu. I'm the man who knows. And if you had access to a old, deep, and dark historic cave, would you investigate for paranormal activity? Well, I have a close friend who had just the opportunity, and he discovered actually something so creepy that I'm not even sure what to think of it. By the way, if you enjoy the stories that we have to tell and the things that we do here on this channel, please, if you haven't already, please subscribe. Tell your friends, let them know that we talk about deep stuff. We don't talk about the usual stuff here. So this is about winding down and relaxing with the strange. These are my real life stories of the impossible. Ed and Karen Underwood are close friends of mine, which basically means that they're usually, that means that they're industry people, people who are within the mentalism and magic and showbiz world. And, that's what it is just because that's how I live. But what you are about to learn could be entertaining for all the wrong reasons. As I mentioned in yesterday's video, Ed had access to the Marvel Canyon in Branson, Missouri, which is actually the first major attraction in Branson, Missouri before all the crazy stuff started happening and people started coming in and doing regular entertainment shows and stuff. So he was a tour guide at the Marvel Canyon, and he basically led people through this very, very dark natural cavern, which was a very spooky cavern. In fact, it's different from like this. If you go to Luray Caverns out here near Washington, D.C., it's beautiful. If you go to the natural caverns in Texas or anywhere, all over the place, they're just beautiful. But this particular Marvel Cavern is really kind of it's dark. Some of the passageways get really narrow, and some of them are actually so small that you have to be a certain size just to be able to go through the little tour. And so it's very, very interesting because there's a lot of history, and not necessarily good history, associated with that canyon. There are these locals who, at one time, it was like a local gang. They were called the Bald Nobblers. And the Bald Nobblers actually would make people disappear in the canyon. People who like went up against them and stuff like that. If someone went up against the Bald Nobblers, wouldn't be surprising to find them dead in the bottom of that canyon. So, in that cavern. So it's interesting just because they are that cavern actually had a lot of not just American history associated with, but Native American history. In fact, of all of the exploration and expeditions that have gone in there looking for, say, signs of civilization, they have never found any Native American artifacts in there, which basically meant that the Native Americans found that was sort of like a no one goes there kind of place, right? So that basically meant that it was a scary place. It was a dark place. So this is what happens. My friend Ed decides that he would take a recording device, a little digital recording device, which has a battery life of about 12 hours. We talked about this yesterday. That meant that if he leaves from work at 6 p.m., and he leaves that recording device in the cavern. He left it in this room called the Cathedral Room, which is one of the main rooms of the cavern. That recording device would go from 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. the next morning, which also makes it so that the very midpoint of that recording is midnight. And what he found is that after about a dozen recordings, that there were two times in which it shifted from like regular like water patterns and stuff like that. When I say that, I mean there's like water dripping in the caverns. You can actually hear the water dripping. It changes from that to almost like I'm going to play this recording for you in a second, but it almost sounds like a tearing sound, almost like the fabric of space and time is being torn through in this kind of spooky way. And and then the first thing that he got, the first unusual out of the ordinary sound that he got sounded like marching, and it sounded like kind of like a weird, almost like some kind of clandestine group of soldiers marching through the cavern at about 12:20, sometime around that time. Suddenly, that's what he's getting. And so that's pretty weird, right? And the second time is even creepier. So, again, he doesn't know. And what happens is he starts telling people. And as he starts telling people, the people who run Marvel Cavern basically say, hey, STFU. We don't want business to drop because of your stories. And so that's basically why we decide to not do that. So I'm going to play you the clips right now. So this is the first one, and this took place at about 12:20 and about 20 minutes after midnight, and it sounds like this. Now what you're hearing is water. And that is recording number one. So you hear it, and it's kind of like almost like a tearing sound, almost like the fabric of time and space is being torn. And suddenly, what seems to be just the average dripping of water turns into almost like the marching of like some kind of, like I said, like a clandestine group of men or something like that. But you can't hear any actual voices. You can just hear them almost like they're chanting something while they're marching. That's a very strange. It's a strange clip. Now, that was his first clip. He did this a few times later, and then this, like, it was a month later, the second one suddenly caught like a weird glitch in the matrix. Again, happens after the stroke of midnight, this time at about 2:20 or 2:30 a.m. in the morning. And this one is about the creepiest thing I've ever heard. It's going to sound almost like girls, and it's also going to sound like crying. It's going to sound like a whole mess of people crying. And then you're going to hear like almost repeated sounds of a girl's voice sounding like she's saying something like grandpa. So I don't really know exactly what she's saying, but it does sound like she's saying grandpa. And it sounds like she says it about 5 times, and you can hear crying in the background. So this is creepy audio recording number 2. Let's hear that one more time, because that one sounded a little bit weird. Let's hear it again. That's really weird. Now, here's the thing. I heard an earlier recording of this same recording, and I'm not sure if he gave me a little bit of a longer version the last time. This time, I think I heard 2 grandpas out of it. The last time that I thought I heard it, I thought I heard like up to 5. But that's so weird. Can you hear girls' voices, like young girls' voices in the middle of the night in a deep, dark cavern? There is no way that voices like that could actually be heard, that are actual human voices in that cavern that I know of. And so that is one of the creepiest stories that I have ever heard in all of my time hearing strange phenomenon and recordings and stuff like that. It's one of the more unusual ones. He's also taken it to audio specialists who've examined those recordings, and I apologize, the sound is probably not that great because I'm just, playing it over my iPhone. But it's very, very interesting, and I hope that you actually heard at least one of those girls' voices in that second recording. But that is the creepy, creepy story of Marvel Canyon in Branson, Missouri, and my friend Ed Underwood's exploration into the deep, dark cavern of mysterious secrets. These are real life stories of the impossible. They are not necessarily stories that are theatrical in nature, which is basically what I do for a living. I perform on stage as a mentalist and mind reader, and I have an amazing show, which I would love for you to see. And if you're interested, please go to my website at themanwhoknows.tv and subscribe to my newsletter. You'll actually see a lot more about that side of my life. But meanwhile, I'm very interested in these stories that actually don't make any real explicable sense. So if you're interested in these stories, stay tuned, subscribe, and please comment below if you like this story. Have a great day, and we will talk to you tomorrow for Sunday Wisdom. Monday is Magic Monday. I have a fun little trick to show you. All right, take care.